My name is Mary Thorsby, and I'm the CEO of ABODE, Contemplative Care for the Dying. Welcome to ABODE Academy 7. It's our dementia series. Wow. And we've really had a record-breaking response to this. We've had 90 RSVPs, so I suspect we'll get a few more folks. And we're recording it, so if people miss them, we'll add them to our website as soon as we can. But definitely we have hit on a topic that is very, very interesting and fascinating to folks. So thank you all for joining us. Before we get started and before I introduce Beverly, who will introduce our speaker, it's ABODE's tradition to start every gathering with a short contemplative moment. It's an opportunity for us to kind of shake off the day, put everything out of our mind, and just get comfortable. Put your worries aside and get focused on being present with one another, being present with our speaker, and being present with ourselves. So let's just take about 30 seconds to put your shoulders back, get comfortable, leave your worries at the door. This time is just for us. Good time to take some deep breaths. Okay, I think most of you know about ABODE. We teach the art of contemplative living and dying while providing a beautiful home, this one right here, and compassionate care to those at the very end of life. And we do that at absolutely no charge. We run completely on donations and grants. So if the spirit moves you, our donate button is on our website, abode.org. We are in our 10th year for caring for folks at end of life. In fact, we have cared for 430 people since we opened our doors almost 10 years ago. So that's quite a blessing to our community, to those we care for, and to those who love them. We are, in fact, the only home in San Antonio where you can find free end-of-life care. And we are one of 2 or 3 in the whole entire state of Texas. So it's very special. Let's see. Oh, if you'd like to come and see us, or if you have questions about ABODE and any of our programs, we're having an open house this Saturday, the second Saturday of the month. We have an open house from 10 a.m. until noon. Then we have Death Cafe, where we can talk about end of life over cake. That's 2 to 3:30. And then we have a contemplative drum circle at 4. That's this Saturday. We can talk about that a little bit more at the end. Right now, I would like to introduce our board chair, Beverly Tumala. Beverly has been running our board for the past almost 2 years, and she also chairs our education committee. And she was voted best hospice nurse of San Antonio.
This is super long.
So why don't we all go on mute? And Beverly is a nurse with Trinity Hospice. Welcome, Beverly. She'll introduce our speaker. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mary. Hi, everybody. I know many of you, and I'm so happy to see you here tonight with us. We've thought long and hard about this topic tonight, and it's one that I have really looked forward to because in hospice work, I see this so much. And when I was a hospital nurse, ICU nurse, we didn't see much dementia in those walls. And so when I went to hospice, that was a stark reality that dementia is out there. It's out there. And I remember one of my hospice doctors, as we were sitting at a meeting one morning and kind of talking about it, he looked around the room and there were probably 8 of us sitting at the table. And he just said, well, statistically, 3 of us sitting here will have it. And that's scary. That's scary to think about, right? So I'm so happy to welcome our guest tonight, our guest speaker. And we went after her. As soon as we heard that we were going to do this program, we jumped on it. And we asked Jenny to please join us. So tonight we have Ginny Funk. She is the Director of Programs for the San Antonio South Texas chapter of the Alzheimer's Association. This evening, she's sharing her expertise in dementia, the big picture. And she'll share a personal experience too. Jenny lost her mother to dementia and is now on this journey again with us to share her expertise. Jenny graduated from Trinity University with a degree in psychology and from Our Lady of the Lake University with a dual master's degree in counseling, psychology, and marriage and family therapy. So I would love to welcome Jenny. Thank you for coming and sharing your expertise with us tonight. And we're so happy you're here.
Thanks. Thank you so much, Beverly and Mary. Thank you very much for the invitation. I too see a lot of familiar names and faces and want to say thank you so much for this opportunity. I have to give a shout out to Susan Moreno, who I have known since back when I was a volunteer for the Alzheimer's Association 25 years ago, which we go way, way back. Yeah. And also Miss Linda Sindala. And Miss Linda, she facilitates a weekly support group for the Alzheimer's Association, and she's done it for years. So talk about a volunteer of the year. She should be nominated every year for the amount of time that she volunteers in supporting families who are on this journey. So shout out to both of you, and just it's great to be here. I have a lot to share. I am not, see, I had all this ready to go. Let me just share my screen. I will say that of everything, IT is probably my least favorite thing. Just because there it is. Okay, now can you see that?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. Thank goodness I work with people who they definitely help me with all of this, because IT is not my thing, but we certainly have come a long way with learning things when COVID really hit and being able to do a lot of education this way. So Mary, thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm going to definitely, I hope, given a really high level, and then I cannot more highly recommend that you all RSVP and sign up for the rest of the speakers. I know one who's on here with us this evening, just because it will get much more detailed and into a lot more really important information. So I'm just going to do an overview and kind of give you a little bit of an idea and background on some numbers, some facts, certainly the impact of Alzheimer's and dementia in all of our communities. I heard at the beginning, we have people all the way from Alaska who are joining. So how absolutely incredible. Thank you for sharing and wanting to learn more about this. So I'm sitting in San Antonio, Texas. So not getting our facts and figures video to work, I thought, well, at least I can show you that in March of every year, the Alzheimer's Association actually publishes a new facts and figures. It's actually a whole booklet. It's quite large, but every state has updated statistics on the prevalence of Alzheimer's disease, on caregivers, the numbers of total hours that unpaid caregivers give towards this. In other words, family caregivers. Also, caregivers who have chronic health conditions, caregivers with depression, workforce. We have all kinds of statistics on workforce and how difficult this is, not just for family caregivers, but for professional caregivers. We have a lot of information. All of this can be found on our website, which I'll make sure to put that in the chat as well. It's just alz.org. And you can put in facts and figures. And this year's special report was specifically looking at, with caregiving, how difficult in a situation we are with professional caregivers. As many of you may already know, we just don't have enough. we also don't have enough in the workforce as far as neurologists and geriatricians and people who we need, who are specialized in caring for people. So if you're a numbers person, if you're a statistics person, just know these are published in March. And so these are the brand new 2024 facts and figures. And all of that really helps us, especially as part of one thing that the Alzheimer's Association that we do is advocacy. So I'll talk about that in a little bit, how important advocacy is. Oh, I don't know why that's skipping forward. Sorry. The amount of funding that goes into research, ultimately to find a cure, to find treatments, to come up with preventions so that future generations do not get Alzheimer's disease. All of that is wrapped up, honestly, in funding, but also statistics. We have to be able to show how incredibly prevalent and difficult and expensive and everything else that Alzheimer's disease and other related dementias are. So that leads us right into this slide. And I meant to tell you, Mary, I can share this with you. And this, just know this is a snapshot of 2024. But this, all of these slides are available. I would say probably the most commonly asked question that we still get almost every day, myself and my coworkers, what's the difference between Alzheimer's and dementia? So we use a picture of an umbrella as the best way to describe the difference, with dementia being the broad overview word. It's just an overview word for symptoms. Someone is having symptoms of cognitive loss that progressively get worse and worse, and that interfere and are severe enough to interfere with daily living. So dementia is a broad term for all these symptoms, and I'll go through the symptoms here in a sec. What is important is the long handle that comes down underneath those symptoms is, well, what's causing those symptoms? And Alzheimer's disease at the top of this list is the brain disease that causes the most dementia symptoms out of the over 100 things out there that cause dementia symptoms. So that means Alzheimer's accounts for considered 60 to 80% of all dementia symptoms. So that's why you hear about Alzheimer's the most. You certainly, it gets diagnosed the most. The name of our nonprofit is Alzheimer's Association, although the legal long name is and related dementias, because we cover all the rest of the causes of dementia that fall under that umbrella. So the second most common or prevalent cause of dementia symptoms is called vascular dementia. I cannot see all of you all, but some of you may be very familiar or have heard of vascular dementia. What about Lewy body? Lewy body dementia. That is another disease of the brain that causes an individual to have dementia symptoms. Frontotemporal. It's also been kind of called Pick's disease. And it's a dementia, it's a brain disease that specifically targets that frontotemporal part of our brain right behind our forehead. There's Huntington's, if you've ever heard of Huntington's disease. Most people have heard of Parkinson's disease. So all of these different types of diseases can cause a person to have dementia symptoms. We also kind of think of, okay, an umbrella term is cancer. If someone said, well, I have cancer, the next thing would be, well, what kind? I don't even know how many types of cancer there are. I know there are a lot. Again, when someone tells us, well, my grandmother had dementia, the first thing we think is, okay, well, that means that she had symptoms of cognitive loss, like memory loss and changes in judgment and all kinds of different symptoms. But what was the cause of it? So the other thing that we know now more than ever before is that it's estimated that at least half of the people who have Alzheimer's disease have another form of dementia as well. So that's mixed dementia. So people can have Parkinson's disease and Alzheimer's disease. Or with my mother, it was estimated she had more than one type of disease that was causing her symptoms. Again, if you want more on this, because I'm just doing a high level, there's a lot of information about different types of diseases that cause dementia on our website. And of course you can we're supporting all the above. The other important part of that umbrella is there's also a section underneath that umbrella that has what we call reversible causes of dementia. So for example, if you have seen an older individual, an older adult, get a urinary tract infection, a UTI, it can cause someone to have dementia symptoms. Usually that causes these symptoms to come on very quickly, unlike how Alzheimer's disease can kind of be subtle and sneak its way in. So there are things like depression, thyroid issues, medication interactions. So when we talk about, and we're going to get right into the warning signs, it's important to not ignore them and just chalk them up to, well, it's just getting old, or, oh my gosh, maybe it's Alzheimer's. It could be a wide number of things that causes an individual to have these symptoms. And that's why it's very important to not ignore it if you start noticing things. So I think I kind of skipped ahead, but again, specifically, Alzheimer's disease is a brain disease specifically. Darn it, that's doing that without me. That is the most prevalent cause of dementia, and it causes problems. It starts attacking the brain, the areas of the brain that store our short-term memory, leading into our more long-term memory, our thinking, our ability to make plans, our behaviors, the way that we talk, the language center of our brain, the way that we write sentences. Alzheimer's disease, as it progressively spreads throughout the brain, causes these dementia symptoms that, again, can that are progressive and fatal. Alzheimer's disease is the sixth leading cause of death in the United States. We know that it's progressive. We know that the symptoms gradually get worse. We know that there are different stages, and we have information on all of that. It's also gray. It's not a black and white, how someone flows through the stages. We talk about these dementias as, if you've seen one person with Alzheimer's disease, you've seen one person, because every single individual is different in exactly where it starts in the brain, how it spreads throughout the brain, what other medical issues might be, comorbidities that might be adding to the difficulties of Alzheimer's disease. So it can be, we don't even usually give out average 7 to 10 years. We've had a board member who's had a loved one who had Alzheimer's for over 20 years. So it's really varying as far as how long the disease lasts. That we get that question quite a lot as well. I also want to share that how this affects our communities. We know that there are populations that are at a higher risk. And ladies, this is why this computer skips ahead like that. I'm sorry. Almost 2/3 of the people who have Alzheimer's disease are women. And that is unacceptable. That is a very large number. So there's research specifically looking at why is that so skewed? We also know that for Hispanic families, Hispanics actually develop and are likely to have dementia and Alzheimer's disease at a rate of 1.5 times their Caucasian counterparts. And African Americans, twice as likely to develop Alzheimer's disease as their counterparts, as their Caucasian counterparts. So we know there are populations at higher risk. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more. just some more numbers. We know that, and we're not leaving any men out, but we know that 2/3 of individuals who have Alzheimer's disease are women. 2/3 of caregivers are women. 1/3 are daughters. We know that specifically we have to take care of caregivers, because caregivers, generally you can watch their health decline faster than the person with Alzheimer's disease or another related dementia. I want to make sure and say that whenever I say Alzheimer's disease, I am also including the other irreversible dementias. As some of you may know, if you are a caregiver, it takes a physical, emotional, financial, social toll. So just again, Alzheimer's disease is considered one of the most expensive diseases in the United States. We know that there are 6.9 million people just in America who have Alzheimer's disease. It's 55 million worldwide. In the state of Texas, we know there are over or close to 500,000 individuals who have Alzheimer's disease. Again, more statistics that you can get in every state that we have represented here. Let me talk about some of the warning signs. I'm going to go quick because, again, a lot to cover, but we do a whole class on this. And we talk about how, again, it's really important, if you notice these things, not to ignore or just blow it off, because dementia and dementia symptoms are not normal. We are not all, Alzheimer's disease is not a normal part of aging. We are not all going to grow old. And I say old so lovingly because we are all, if we are blessed enough to keep living, we are all going to get old. I just have such a hard time when people make derogatory or they make such jokes about older individuals, because I think, well, which direction are you going in? We're all going in that direction. Millions of people develop Alzheimer's disease and one of these other brain diseases. Millions of people do not. So with warning signs, it's really important to just know that there are things that happen with the brain that are considered normal aging type things. But Alzheimer's is a disease, just like cancers are a disease, heart disease, diabetes is a disease, and it's not normal. So, and these aren't in any order, and they're also, you don't have to have all 10 to go, oh, okay, well, this might be serious. So the first one we kind of talk about is memory loss that disrupts daily life. That is not forgetting where you laid your keys down. That's actually much more serious of a symptom, like getting in your car and not knowing how to put the keys in the ignition, or not knowing how to turn the car on, even if you've driven that car for years. It's not knowing where to go when you get out on the streets because of forgetfulness of is it right or is it left? So dementia, again, they're so much more serious. Challenges in planning or solving problems. Every day is kind of a series of problems for us. Sometimes we kind of do things on autopilot, and you might start to see someone who starts having challenges with just, again, things like familiar tasks. That's also another one. Let's say you've always had someone who's balanced the checkbook, and now you've got thousands of dollars missing and there's no accounting for where it is, and things are really starting to become really challenging for someone, whereas they never were before. Or difficulty completing familiar tasks, such as remembering that it's time to bathe or shower or eat, or sometimes people overeat because they don't remember that they've already eaten. There are issues with language, with speaking, with writing. Oftentimes it is starting to say, you'll see someone start to say that or ask the same question over and over and over. You give an answer and then they ask and ask and ask. again, I want to be really clear. That doesn't mean it's Alzheimer's disease, but it means something is causing that to happen in the brain where they don't remember that they've just asked and that you've just answered that same thing over and over. You start to see difficulty in joining conversations, difficulty with writing. I noticed that with both my mother and now with my father, recently diagnosed with Alzheimer's. Both of their writing has changed incredibly. A little known warning sign is that number 5, eyesight, visual images, spatial relationships. These diseases affect the part of the brain that tells us when you go to sit down in a chair, how to sit down in a chair, and also judging the distance of how to do that. So you might start to see where people also start to fall more often because their vision is actually changing and not being able to tell the distance between themselves and the chair, or getting in and out of a car, or you might start to see things with driving as well. Think about all these things. You have to have such concentration and visual awareness and spatial awareness when driving that's also can be a warning sign if you start to have some incidents and also not being able to remember where they came from. Misplacing things. Now, this one's really important. Misplacing things and losing the ability to retrace steps. So the difference is we all misplace things. We all walk in and go, why did I come in this room? What was I doing? What's happening? But the difference is for someone who's having dementia symptoms, they're not able to sit down, no distractions, replay in their head, retrace their steps and figure out, oh, that's where I laid the keys down. I came in and the phone was ringing and the dog needed let out and this happened and that, and I had to run to the restroom and oh, that's where I threw those keys. All that ability to retrace steps gets very damaged when something that's causing this symptom happens. Number 8, you can't kind of see it, it's kind of tucked back, but decreased judgment. That front part of our brain that says, do this, don't do that. You may think that, but do not say that out loud. That's a good decision. That's a bad decision. You know the consequences if you make the bad one. What happens is that part of the brain starts to be damaged, and you start to see individuals sometimes who just make really, really bad decisions or bizarre behavior. And you wonder what in the world is going on. That's a symptom of something that's happening. Number 9, withdrawal. Well, if you think about all these other ones, an individual will start to oftentimes withdraw from their favorite things because they're not so favorite anymore. They're getting more difficult. I don't want to go get together with the family every Sunday. It's overwhelming, and they may not tell you this. They might just decline, but it might be too loud. There might be too much going on. They might think, well, people are really starting to they're mad at me. They say I repeat things all the time, but I don't. That kind of thing. And then that number 10, changes in mood or personality. I'll be honest, sometimes families share with us that they actually get along better with their loved one. It's not always a bad personality or mood change, but what this is some really significant swings. Again, we have a whole class where we talk about kind of the normal things in each of these and the things that, it's normal to have a bad day and just be kind of blue or down or mad about something. But this is where you have changes in mood where an individual has a catastrophic reaction to something that you think, well, it wasn't that big a deal. What are they so angry or upset or mad or sad about? So those are symptoms to watch for. And the importance of keeping an eye on those is, again, are they progressive? Are they getting more and more? Are they getting more and more difficult? Because keeping in mind, a lot of things can cause those symptoms, things that are considered treatable and reversible. So it's important to not brush them off. I tell people all the time, Keep a journal, write things down. If you notice a loved one or if you're concerned about yourself, have a conversation with your doctor. We're doing as much as we can to influence how diagnoses is made, because that can be really difficult, but also how hard it is in a doctor office to speak up about being concerned about something. But also for the longest time, this is just a disease that's been hidden. And so we still have people who will come out of an office with, oh, they told me it was just a little touch of dementia, or, oh, you're just getting older. And what we tell people is, don't let someone do that if you're concerned, because there are things that we could do right now that if it truly is Alzheimer's or another form of irreversible Alzheimer's or another dementia, things that we won't be able to do in the future, like making plans and giving someone our power of attorney to make decisions on our behalf, and all those really tough discussions that the more these progress, the more difficult it becomes to even have those kind of discussions. I want to talk about treatments just because we are considered to be, for the first time ever in the over 100 years that Alzheimer's disease has been around, the era of treatment. There are now what's considered treatments for Alzheimer's disease. But there's a great big but there, I'm sorry to say.
No cure.
There is no cure yet. That is true. There are medications that you may have heard of or be familiar with that help with the symptoms of dementia, but don't actually slow the progression of the disease. Well, now we actually have FDA approved medications for symptoms, but also treatments. However, they are so darn brand new that they are so expensive that they're not accessible yet. They're just too expensive. We are told repeatedly by the cancer community that the Alzheimer's community, we are where they were 20 plus years ago when the first actual treatments for cancer came out, ridiculously expensive. So we go into advocacy mode of, look, if you're going to FDA approved treatments, actual treatments for Alzheimer's, they have to be accessible, affordable, covered by insurance, covered by Medicare, Medicaid, etc. So we have a lot of information about all of these different things. And I just want to keep going, but if there are any questions at the end I can answer, I definitely want to. I want to talk about risk, because that's the second most commonly asked thing we get. What's my risk? If my family member has this, that means I'm going to get it, right? It does not. We don't actually call Alzheimer's disease a genetic disease per se, because there's so many more things that we know are involved. There are a lot of risk factors. The number one risk factor is actually age. And so that means that I think our tagline will someday be, who's at risk? Anybody with a brain. Because like it or not, we are all aging. And when we hit the age of 65, the numbers of people who have Alzheimer's and other dementias skyrockets. Now, a lot of researchers are looking at, they believe it's in the brain at a much younger age. It's just that the symptoms don't necessarily appear until later in life. But not just age, and yes, some family genetics. If you have a parent or a sibling, you're at a higher risk than if you're sitting next to someone who has no family history. But it does not mean that you or any future generations are going to get Alzheimer's disease, because we still can't pinpoint exactly why some people do and why some don't. What we do know is when it comes to other risk factors, brain health and heart health are very, very key. So diabetes is a risk factor for later developing Alzheimer's and related dementias. We know heart disease is linked now. So we know, and we have a whole other class on this about healthy living, that what's good for your heart is good for your brain, and it's not too late to start making different choices. And I'm sorry to say, exercise comes out still at kind of the top of the list as far as what you can do for your overall health that contributes to your heart health, that contributes to your brain health, is exercise. However, keeping socially connected is so key. There have been large studies on people in isolation who have much higher prevalence of Alzheimer's disease. And if you think about it, okay, well, how healthy is someone eating, or how much is their brain being challenged, or how much is their heart rate getting up if they're completely isolated? So we know keeping up as socially connected as possible, challenging your brain, keeping active, even if you're sitting in a chair, getting your heart rate up. Those are all really good things. We know that challenging your brain, we know controlling blood pressure and diabetes is really important. We know that sleep, there are a lot more sleep studies now about the link between your overall health and your brain health and poor sleep, being smoke-free, all these other health-related things that we now know through research are so linked with the health of someone's brain. I want to talk quick about research because, like cancer and other diseases, the only way that we are going to have a cure and more treatments and prevention for future generations from having to deal with these awful diseases is through research, and research takes funding. So I'm incredibly proud that the Alzheimer's Association is the largest nonprofit funder of research. These numbers are kind of hidden behind us, but right now I want to share that across the world, the association has $405 million right now invested in research. That's in over 1,100 different studies, over 59 or 56 countries. Pretty incredible. I threw in Texas just because I thought it was pretty amazing that, oh shoot, sorry, I have to move this around. But right now, the association across the state of Texas at many universities, we have over 12 million invested in research studies. And so research is really important. Find out if you have local research studies wherever you are, because of course they all need people. And they are not all having to go into a doctor's office or get a blood draw or do anything like that. Of course, I'm enrolled in a thing called Trial Match, and Trial Match is a matching service where you can see if you might be a match for a study. Of course, I'm enrolled in it, and I was able to do an online caregiver survey. That was an East Coast university. So there's all kinds of studies, and they all need people. Making a difference. I also just want to make sure that you all are aware, as an organization, the association, we are available nationwide. That's our 800 number right now. I'm sitting in our office. I do have a couple of people who are here because we have a board meeting going on next door, but right now our office is closed. But right now you might need to ask questions. You want to get information. You want to know about where your support groups are that are closest to you. You want to vent because you're a caregiver right now and you're really struggling. Maybe you're an individual living with Alzheimer's and you want to know what's available for you. You can call our helpline 24 hours a day and speak to a trained staff member. So that 800 number is really important. Also, go to alz.org. We have so much that's available. Oops. I just want to say how you can help. If you are touched by this disease, one of the most important things you can do is share your story. Speak up about it. The more that we share, the more stigma goes away. Anyone can get this disease. And of course, there are people who are under the age of 65 who develop Alzheimer's disease. So there are younger onset individuals. This can happen to anyone. sharing our stories and how difficult this is, it makes a really, really big difference. And just know also you can get involved. We just have a lot, and like all nonprofits, we rely very heavily on volunteers. Are we doing on time? Okay, I think we're good. Our vision is a world without Alzheimer's and other dementia. That is ultimately our goal, to find a cure for this, to get more treatments out there and available and accessible to all people, and to ultimately have a prevention so that we don't have anyone go through this anymore. So I'm going to back up and take a breath. I feel like I covered a lot in a short period of time, but questions. Are there any questions that I can answer? Anything that anyone wants to share?
Jenny, that was fantastic. Thank you. Let's see, how do we see everybody? Do you want to unshare your...
Stop sharing? Sure.
Yeah, that way we can
Okay.
keep a look. And you can use the chat function too, if you would like. In fact, Diana asked a question: can the name of the research company be written out? Oh, I think that was on your slide.
Absolutely. So I'm going to put it in the chat. There's such a, oh, what in the world is happening with my screen? Okay. Okay, meeting group chat. I think,
Yes.
is that everybody? Okay. Okay, so if you go to, or if you call our 800 number, which I'll put that in there as well, it's called Trial Match. And you know how, I'm going to make a joke here, but you know how there's matching services for dating and stuff? Well, nationwide, the association has this matching service between all clinical trials that are, listed basically with .gov and through universities. And you can create a profile for yourself or maybe a loved one if they too might want to be involved. And you will get notified if you give them either your phone number or your email, and it will say, ding, you are initially matched for a research study. Would you like to hear more? Would you like to be contacted? And they'll follow up with you. And you might be able to, again, they need people who have this in their family, don't have it in their family, all age ranges, you name it. There's such a need, and we know it makes a difference because right now, Alzheimer's disease kills more people with breast cancer and prostate cancer combined. We know that death rates on other diseases are declining, specifically because what goes into research. So it's really important that, we push research a lot because it is it's going to take to have a cure for this. Please touch upon the consent issue for dementia patients who may benefit from being in a study, but who can't or won't give consent due to impairment or plain old denial. Oh, what an excellent question. I wish I had a good answer. So here's another reason why early detection, which, let's be honest, we never really use that as an important thing with Alzheimer's disease, because unfortunately for years, it's kind of been a shoulder shrug thing of, well, there's nothing you can do. There's nothing we can do. You have Alzheimer's, come back and see us in 6 months. Oh my goodness. Well, actually, there's a lot that can be done for individuals in the early stages when we could have hopefully a conversation about, we need to get some things in order. We need to get power of attorney. We need to know who you want to make decisions for you when you no longer can. I know it's hard to have those conversations. We help with that. How do you do that? But also asking, is it something that you would like to be involved in? And today I filled in for a support group facilitator at a support group that we have for people living with dementia because our facilitator had to cancel at the last minute. And these are the conversations that we have with those individuals. Some of them are like, absolutely, I want to have an impact on this. I want to have an impact on the future. And then some are, no, I don't want to do that. I'm not interested. And so there is consent, but also in the early stages, two things can be happening. It's kind of like with everything. When people tell us, we can't talk about this with our loved one because they get very angry and say, there's nothing wrong with me. There's something wrong with you, but not with me. Well, there's two things that can be happening with that. One, a person can have these symptoms and have Alzheimer's in the early stages and be in total denial just as much as us family members can. So denial is very real, but there's also that part of the brain where we talk about they don't know that they don't know. So you may try to talk about this and they absolutely, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm not repeating myself. I'm fine to drive, all those kind of things. And it's not necessarily that they're in denial. It's that they cognitively cannot, they don't know. They don't have the ability or the insights anymore to understand that they're not able to do some of those things anymore. So it is kind of like the same thing with talking with a loved one, with trying to get consent. If you can get it early enough in the process where they agree, great. But once they reach that point where they really are not able to understand what you're asking for, then they won't be able to participate.
See, I saw that Patricia Riggins has her hand up. Would you like?
Yes, thank you, Mary. First of all, Jenny, thank you for sharing this. It's almost overwhelming, all of the stuff you have presented. And I have two questions. One is, can you speak to whatever exams are out there to measure mild cognitive impairment, whether that's done through a PCP or a psychologist or whomever? And secondly, I'm interested in understanding where head trauma fits in with, because you had that on one of your slides. And certainly we all hear about football concussions, but quite frankly, there are lots of other concussions that are out there, and where that fits in and or contributes to the onset of cognitive impairment. Thank you.
Sure. So you're going to have to help me here because it's been a long, long afternoon. The first one was basically, yes, so MCI, mild cognitive impairment, is something that an individual may be starting to show a little bit of symptoms, but a doctor may determine that it's not Alzheimer's. It's not an actual Alzheimer's disease that's attacking brain cells. It might be some other things. So that's a total diagnosis question. It used to be 20 years ago that the only way that you could get an accurate diagnosis was after someone passed away. That's not the case anymore. There are now so many more tools to be able to make a diagnosis that a primary care doctor or a specialist like a neurologist or a geriatrician has at their tool in their toolbox to be able to make a diagnosis. But I'm not going to say it's easy in any way. They have to rule out, first of all, that it's not an infection. It's not a UTI. It's not your thyroid. It's not something going on with medications. It's not that you, medication interactions can cause someone to have dementia symptoms. So they really have to rule all that other stuff out. They also can do PET scans, which it wasn't all that long ago that wasn't even accessible. Now, the problem with those brain scans is that they're not available in all communities. We think about our folks in the rural areas. They can also be expensive, depending. So they can help assist in making a diagnosis to be able to see if there are clumps of plaques and tangles in the brain. And if the brain has gone through some atrophy, which the brain actually shrinks as these diseases kill brain cells. And so those things can be seen on PET scans now. There's still a lot of cognitive tests that they can, a clock drawing, for example. By the way, the clock drawing, you might hear of it a lot. It was created by a researcher and a doctor right here in San Antonio, which is amazing. Asking someone to draw a clock and put, 10 after 9 on it. It's fascinating, the things that an individual who's having dementia symptoms, what they'll come up with. So there are a lot of things. What we recommend is, and also you can call our helpline or look on our website for kind of the list of things to make a diagnosis. But the most important thing is speaking up about it in a doctor's appointment and not taking, oh, you're just getting a little older, there's nothing wrong. Well, no, I feel like something is wrong, or something is wrong with mom or my husband or whoever it may be. And I want to be able to get a baseline so that we can come back in 6 months and do the whole round of testing again to see have things progressed. And the good news we know is that not everybody who has MCI progresses on to have Alzheimer's disease. But on the flip side, we know that everyone who has Alzheimer's, we know this through research studies, everyone who has Alzheimer's disease went through the stages of early mild cognitive impairment. So if we can get treatments, a cure, everything, and stop it here, rather than, most people don't even get diagnosed until they're more in the middle stages, because by then we cannot ignore this anymore. We have a serious problem on our hands and something's wrong. So that was a long answer to your question. Kind of.
That's wonderful. And I don't want to hog stuff, but could you address the head trauma?
Head trauma.
And,
so
yeah. And then if you have time,
yeah.
So you mentioned intervention after MCI. Is that medication? Well, I mean, what is that?
Yeah. So head traumas, thankfully, due to the studies that have been done on football players, because they finally just adamantly advocated for, there's higher prevalence. We know that, and looking at those studies and looking at brain slides after someone has passed, that repeated concussions and head trauma through the military, there is a higher prevalence of Alzheimer's and other dementias. So the whole thing of, 10 healthy habits for your brain, one of them is physically protect your brain. If you're doing bike rides, wear a helmet. You make the decision whether you're going to play sports that can repeatedly give you concussions, those kind of things, because they do physically have an impact on the brain. Also, you know what? I think I also saw a question earlier. The youngest person that I've ever met, who was much younger than me, was 45 years old, who had Alzheimer's disease. If you think this is hard and really, really, really hard for someone at 85 or 75 or 65, someone at 45, it is even more difficult for them to get a diagnosis, because it's the last thing that's truly looked at. And, no matter the age, truly, there's a lot of people who are in early stages and are still working and driving and still doing a lot of things. But, for those younger individuals who still have kids at home and, are trying to work full time and are getting fired because they can't continue to do their jobs, so that's the youngest. We do have a younger onset support group, and it's for people under the age of 65. So that they can talk about their own issues, because it's much different than the issues that, say, someone might have who's 65 and older. And then you asked about treatment. So the two treatments that are FDA approved in this era of treatments are called Aduhelm and Leqembi. Well, it's a long story. I'll make a long story short. They were too expensive that no one can afford them. They're not accessible to anyone. Centers for Medicare and Medicaid originally came out with their decision that out of all the FDA approved medications for any disease, they weren't going to cover these treatments. So then we went into whole advocacy mode of, you are not going to leave out this. You can't do this to all these millions of people who have Alzheimer's disease in early stages and not make this accessible. So then CMS is kind of changing their decision. We also work with insurance companies. Then the pharmaceutical company that originally made the very first one, Aduhelm, came out with a statement that they're going to stop producing Aduhelm after all this went through, and focus their efforts elsewhere. These two treatments they're not in the pill form, they're not in a patch form, they're through an IV. So again, you have to have access to that type of treatment, and they're really expensive. So while that's not great news, the good news behind that is we have this nationwide scientific and research group, and the stuff that's coming down the pipeline, because there's so much awareness, because there's more funding available than ever through the US, through our government, because there's more of a focus, because the prevalence of this is so staggering that finally it's getting a lot of attention. And with that, there are going to be a lot of things coming down the pipeline. So we have more hope than ever. But it's still really, it's hard. It's almost like we are so far behind because of like how breast cancer used to be, or diabetes. I remember when I was young, you didn't talk about those things. Those were no-nos. Well, we've been stuck in that for far too long with Alzheimer's, and we're making moves. So
You certainly are. We had one more question. We had one more question in the chat. This one from Sandy Weeks. Have you seen your organization using end of life doulas to assist families in caring for their loved ones toward the end of life?
So what I'll just say overall is that when it comes to end of life, we have courses on it. We have brochures on it. We wholeheartedly hope that families have connected into our support long before it gets to that point. But we try to do a lot of education about choices, and we get asked about artificial hydration or what happens if ... So I can't honestly say that I know enough about especially like what you do. Now, when we talk about hospice, we are very pro hospice in that we know people can be on hospice for months and months and months and be getting all those benefits. But because hospice, just like Alzheimer's and dementia, kind of has such a scary thing to it, don't want to do it. Well, people, it happens a lot. People go on hospice services and then pass a week later when they could have had those services for a long time. So yes, I would say as an organization, we are very pro in learn about end of life, most people do not know that Alzheimer's is fatal. How is that even possible? Well, when the brain that basically runs everything in the body can no longer tell everything what to do and tell us how to eat and drink and all those things, first of all, for years it was listed on a death certificate as pneumonia. Well, now with a lot of advocacy, we know that pneumonia was caused because of someone in the end stages having Alzheimer's disease and what that did with fluid in the lungs, etc. So yes, we need to, in every way possible, help families through end of life in any way that we can, like what you all do as just an incredible example of what you all do, for sure.
Thank you. We'd be delighted to partner with you in any way. I just have one last question before we wrap up. Can you share with us the top 3 or 4 things you do in your personal life in an effort to keep dementia at bay?
Oh boy. Okay, that's a tough one. So I lost my mom in 2019. this was right under my nose and I was in denial. I mean, I've worked here for 23 years and I was full out in denial because there's no way that, that could possibly be happening. So I can tell you it's a whole lot easier to tell people to take care of themselves as caregivers and get support and go to a support group and learn about the disease, take classes, call our helpline multiple times, all those things. When it comes down to yourself, I also understand it's really hard. My dad was just diagnosed last fall, and it's kind of the same thing. I know that there are so many people out there who are on this journey by themselves. It's very isolating. Again, caregivers' health tends to go down faster than their loved one because it can become so stressful. And I just can't say enough. You don't have to do this by yourself. The hardest thing is just picking up the phone and calling and saying, okay, I need help. It's hard. It's very hard to do that. I have an incredible group of people that I work with that are super supportive. I have wonderful friends who are supportive, and I have learned to a couple of lessons to not say, don't feel guilty, because when people, as my parents, have needed levels of care that I'm not able to provide, which means I've had to make the decision to get them into care that they would never in a million years have thought that we would have to do that. For someone to say, don't feel guilty. Oh my gosh. Well, sure, if I could just turn it off. So I've learned to not say, oh, don't feel guilty, but more so, I understand guilt. I understand how difficult it is. Just don't get stuck there. I understand denial, but don't get stuck there, because if it truly is Alzheimer's or another dementia, you can be in denial all you want, but it's going to keep progressing. And then it's just going to get harder and harder and harder to make decisions. So I feel for just all the people out there who are on this journey. And just want to make sure that everyone knows that there's support. There is support everywhere. Even just if you have a telephone, you can always call and speak with us. So
very good. Very good. Wow. Well, this is a great start to our series. Next week, we've got Dr. Jeffrey Benzik. He's going to be speaking about your brain on dementia. And I wanted to do a shout out. We've got so many staff, ABODE volunteers, ABODE doulas, end-of-life doulas on the call. And I see a lot of family members and friends of folks that we have cared for at ABODE. So it's just so nice to see everybody. Beverly will be speaking after Jeffrey, and then we have a panel of caregivers, including Sandy Reagan, who is here with us, and Aspen Amon, and Ed Alderete. So, and then we end the series with Dr. Sudha Seshadri. She's amazing. So we've got a lot of good things ahead. We're out of time. So anyway, thank you all so much. It was just great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you. Thank you all. Look forward to the next speaker.
Bye, Judy. Thank you,
Wonderful, Jenny. Thank you.
Bye. Hug,
Bye.
Thank you,
hug Susan.
Bye, Susan.
Bye. Great,
Bye.
Jenny. Love you.
Bye, y'all.
Bye. Good night.
Jenny, can you stay on a minute?
Yeah, sure.
I just wanted to tell you how great you were. That was just what the
Oh.
doctor ordered. Really, really
Good.
good.
I didn't want to get too in the weeds because it's just a lot, but wanted to kind of get a little overview of everything. So
Well, you did really, really good. We should have scheduled it for an hour and a half. So I'll remember that next time.
well, I am always available for you for anything you need for sure.
And us you. So yeah, if you haven't had a tour of ABODE, I really hope you can schedule some time and really see what we do here. We tend to get folks who have dementia as a secondary diagnosis but we typically don't do a first diagnosis as dementia. Folks
Yeah.
can live for so long and we just don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe we can do some programming together at some point.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that was such a good question. Just great questions from everyone. And this is going to be great. I'll try to attend the rest for sure.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you all very much for everything you do.